On Tuesday, June 30th, 2026, the lights came up at New York, New Jersey Stadium for a round of 32 match that the entire football world had circled on its calendar weeks in advance. France, unbeaten through the group stage, having scored 10 goals in 3 matches while conceding only 2, facing a Swedish side dangerous enough to put 5 past the Netherlands, but inconsistent enough to lose by the same scoreline themselves. At the center of it, as he has been at the center of nearly every major football conversation for the better part of a decade, stood Kylian Mbappé. 27 years old, 4 goals already in this tournament, level with his French teammate Ousmane Dembélé, a player most pundits expect to be on the pitch at MetLife Stadium on July 19th, fighting for the trophy that has eluded him since he lifted it as a teenager in 2018. To the casual fan, tonight is simply about goals, tactics, and whether France can keep advancing. But to anyone who's been paying attention to what Mbappé has built off the pitch over the last several years, tonight is also a showcase for something else entirely. One of the most carefully engineered commercial operations in the history of professional sport. Today we're looking past the box score to understand how Mbappé became, in the words of more than one financial analyst now comparing him to tech founders rather than fellow athletes, a diversified commercial enterprise that happens to play football for a living. Welcome back to the Celebs Mindset. Let's start with the foundational move because almost everything Mbappé has built commercially traces back to a single decision he made years before this World Cup, and it had nothing to do with a sponsorship deal. In 2020, while still a young star at Paris Saint-Germain, Mbappé refused to participate in French national team commercial activities, sponsor appearances, promotional shoots, the standard obligations expected of any player in the squad, unless the French Football Federation agreed to grant players individual control over their own image rights during international windows. This wasn't a minor contractual footnote. Traditionally, when a player puts on the national jersey, the federation controls how that image gets used commercially, and the player simply receives a fixed payment regardless of how much value their specific brand generates. Mbappé looked at that arrangement and said no. The dispute was resolved in his favor, and the consequences went well beyond his own bank account because it established a template that several other top players have since adopted. He didn't just negotiate a better deal for himself, he renegotiated the terms of the relationship between elite players and the institutions that govern their sport, and he did it as a 21-year-old. That same instinct followed him through every major contract since. When he eventually moved to Real Madrid in 2024, the deal he signed wasn't simply about salary, though the numbers there are substantial in their own right. A 5-year contract worth roughly 31 million euros annually, with a signing bonus reportedly between 107 and 134 million euros paid out in structured installments. The detail that matters most for understanding his actual strategy is the image rights clause. Mbappé reportedly retained as much as 80% of his own image rights as part of the agreement. Most players in his position hand the commercial upside of their own growing fame over to the club. Mbappé kept it. That single contractual detail changes the entire economics of his career. Every time he scores a header at the Bernabeu, makes a magazine cover, or trends globally during a World Cup, the financial benefit of that attention flows disproportionately back to him, not just to the institution employing him. The club still benefits enormously from having him on the roster, but the marginal value of his own rising fame belongs in large part to Mbappé himself. Now layer on top of that another strategic move that most casual fans have probably never heard of, his trademark portfolio. Mbappé has formally trademarked his own goal celebration, the crossed arms pose that's become one of the most recognizable gestures in world football, along with his surname, his initials, and several of his most famous quotes. The trademark filings cover an extensive list of product categories: clothing, footwear, toys, video games, bags, jewelry, perfumery, cosmetics, even toothpaste. In practical terms, this means that any brand wanting to put his name, his initials, or that specific celebration pose on a product needs his direct authorization to do so legally. With well over 100 million followers across his social platforms, that's not a small protection to have locked down. It's the legal foundation for turning one of the most recognizable gestures in sport into a controlled, licensable asset. And then there's the most recent evolution of his commercial strategy, the one that's caught the attention of financial analysts specifically, his shift from endorsements to equity. The clearest example is his deal with Allen, a French fintech and insurance company. Rather than structuring it as a typical ambassador arrangement with a small equity sweetener attached, Mbappé took a genuine investor position in the company at a real valuation announced publicly with enough market visibility to meaningfully affect Allen's brand profile. The distinction matters enormously. An endorsement generates income only as long as the contract runs and only as long as Mbappé continues playing at a level that justifies the fee. An investment generates returns independent of his football career entirely. If Alan grows, his stake grows in value, whether he's scoring goals or not. This is what financial commentators mean when they say Mbappé is starting to resemble a tech founder more than a traditional athlete. His net worth as of 2026 is most commonly estimated around $250 million, with various outlets placing the range anywhere from $180 million to as high as $380 million, depending on how aggressively they value his image rights and equity positions. The exact figure is genuinely difficult to pin down because so much of his wealth now sits in private investments and ongoing royalty structures rather than a single transparent salary line. But the trajectory is clear and well documented. A career that started as talented young player earning well has become, in the words of one financial breakdown, a diversified financial empire with football as the foundation. So here's the actual lesson, and it's worth being precise about what it is and isn't. This isn't a story about an athlete holding institutions hostage or running some kind of shadow operation against FIFA. That framing doesn't hold up, and it isn't necessary because the real story is compelling enough on its own. This is a story about a player who, starting from a position most footballers never even think to question, decided that the value generated by his own fame should flow primarily to him, then spent nearly a decade building the legal, contractual, and financial infrastructure to make sure that actually happened. Image rights clauses, trademark filings, investor stakes instead of pure endorsements, each piece reinforces the others, and together they form something that looks less like a traditional athlete's endorsement portfolio and more like an actual holding company. Tonight on the pitch in New Jersey, Mbappé is just trying to help France win a football match. But every time the cameras find him, every replay of that crossed-arm celebration, every headline generated by tonight's result, all of it flows, at least in part, back into a commercial architecture he spent years deliberately constructing before most of the football world even noticed what he was building. Is Mbappé's image rights and equity-driven strategy the smartest blueprint yet for how elite athletes should structure their careers in the modern economy? Or does turning every celebration and every contract negotiation into a calculated business maneuver risk changing what we actually love about watching someone play the game? Drop your take in the comments below and subscribe to The Celebs Mindset for more breakdowns of the real financial strategies behind the biggest names in global sport. We're just getting started.